But today we're going to be talking about, I guess, the darker side of spirits, right? We're going to be talking about, lower vibrations. So what does that get into? That gets into like demons, things that are scary, talking about stuff from like the Conjuring house, all that crap. And then we're going to get into curses and all that stuff. What do you think on all of that? Please give me your expertise opinion. What have you experienced? And yeah.
So this is one of my favorite things to talk about because there's so much misinformation that floats around the spiritual community around this. And not only that is that that energy is just grossly misunderstood, and most people that talk about it have never faced it. And
Yeah.
that's the real issue that I have, is that, like, how can you really talk about experiences when you've never faced that energy? And so but I understand the fear. We have this primal fear that's almost like it's encoded in our DNA. As far back as we can, look into history, there's talk about evil spirits and demonic possessions, and then when organized religions got really popular, and there was a lot of stuff that went on a whole, like the extremists in those classes went on a whole. And so for thousands of years, we've been told that there's a devil that's going to get us and demons that are going to possess us and drag us to this place against our will.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in my experience with that energy is nothing like that. And
Yeah.
what I can tell, like what I relate it to, like one of the best ways that I can explain it is to talk about an experience that I had, my first time ever experiencing that type of energy.
Do it.
And it was a time where I was new to all of this. I had no idea. I was just I was brand like days into a spiritual awakening, right?
Yeah.
And I was wide open. And so in my house, I felt this like really dark, heavy energy, and I was so extremely afraid of it. And I would feel it hovering over my back whenever I was in my house.
Mhm.
And I would leave. I'd be so afraid I'd leave. And I was talking, I was in therapy at the time, and I would talk to my therapist about this stuff, which is licensed mental health counselor, right? I'm feeling spirits and I'm talking to spirits, right? But she was totally cool with it. And she was part of the spiritual community, and she said, why don't you just face it? And I was like, oh no, I can never do that. Right?
Yes.
I was like, no. And she's like, why not? What's the worst that will happen? And I was like, I don't even want to talk about that. No, 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 no.
Oh.
Right? Because I grew up watching those scary movies, the Hollywood stuff that distorts the heck out of that energy. And so to make a long story short, several days went by after I had that conversation, and I remember it was like I was at my house and I felt that energy hovering over my back, and I was like, and I really needed to be at my house at that time. I had a lot going on. I was running several businesses, and I was actually trying to close up one of them. And I was like, I need to be here. And I was like, I can't do this right now. And I remember getting mad, and I turned around and I faced it, and I said, back the fuck up.
Yes.
As soon as I did that, I saw this dark cloud just back way up and cower in this corner, and like just sit there. And it got really, really, really small and cowered into this corner. And I was like, whoa. I was surprised. I was like, wow. I was like, did I just claim my power? I was like, what just happened? Right. And so I had a conversation with this thing, and I was like, look, you're not welcome here. I don't want you here. I don't want you to be here. And it was before I was really familiar with spirit communication and how I received information. And so it was just me talking to it. I could see it, but it was just me talking to it. I couldn't hear anything back. And so as I was talking to this thing and telling it to leave, I just had this insight. And looking back at now, it was that psychic hit of information. And I just had this knowing. I was like, wow, the fear that I've been feeling is not mine. It's the spirit's. The spirit is afraid. And
Mhm.
I was like, wow. And as soon as I had that insight, it went away.
There. Oh, look at you. Oh, yes, 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 yes. So when you said, this is what I tell my people a lot, and I want to hit on one thing that you said directly. There's a lot of people on here right now on this side, and they go, well, if I feel something in my home and I don't like it and it scares me, what do I do? And I go, well, you're not fully trained into, like, how to feel it. Obviously you can get into intuition and stuff. I said, but my favorite word is leave me the fuck alone. And they go, well, why is that? I go, because if you just say, think about how you're saying, if you just go, leave me alone, there's not a whole lot of energy or power behind it, right? But if you feel it, you go, leave me the fuck alone. It's almost like a boom type of thing. And
It's the energy. You're radiating that intention that I'm in my power, back the fuck up, right?
Exactly. And so then it will do it. I mean, because, sometimes people get too afraid, and that also goes. So let's move on a little bit more of the segue, I guess, in that, right? Is, people go, oh, well, when you cleanse the house with, there's so many things where they're like, oh, you do it with this sage or this smoke or this. And if you don't have smoke, it doesn't work. And I'm like, do you think an all powerful, all knowing entity gives a shit about if there's carbon in the air? It's not that. It's the intention that is put behind it that now helps you do that. So it's almost like your safety blanket going, okay, because I have this, I'm in that mental state, I'm in that feeling. Now I'm pushing this energy and that intention, and that's what's doing the cleansing or whatever you call it. Yeah, that goes along with, shut the fuck up, the whole
Right.
thing.
Right. Yeah, and that's what I tell people too, is like when you get caught up in the ritual, right, of spraying doing the incense and doing the smoke and doing all of this other stuff and doing the sound bowl and putting crystals here, you're not actually doing anything with the spirit. What you're doing is dissociating from the energy. It's still there. You're just not aware of it anymore.
Correct. I absolutely agree with you. Okay, so and we're going to get into darker again, but I just want to get your opinion. What do you feel, or how do you feel about pendulums? You know how I feel about them. I have one and it's broken because I bought it because somebody said, oh, you should buy this. And I said, oh, okay, I'll do it to support a small business. Yes. And look, it even comes with all these nice little colors on it. And one of the things that I saw in a video of this person, she was a great woman, but she says, she's sitting there and she has a gentleman in front of her. She says, do you want to know how pendulums work? And I'm like, yes, show me. Right. So she goes and she has this video of her, and there's this guy with a completely bald head, and he's sitting in a chair, and she puts it here and she goes, watch the energy. It's going to speed it up. Do you see how fast it's going? Up there it goes all over the place. And I'm like, yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? How do you feel about that? Tell me about that. I don't know where it went. It's gone now.
So I like to support small business too, but my thoughts on the pendulum, like when it comes to the pendulum and even the dowsing rods, those things work on micro movements, and so you don't have to move that much. And so it's not a spirit moving it. There's nothing moving it. There's no energy moving it. It's you moving it. And if anybody who thinks that that it is something coming through, well, then put it in a clear box and ask it to move. Right?
Absolutely correct. Yeah. Hang it from a clear box, let it move. There's all these little, micro ways about it, or they go, oh my God, if it's negative, it's going to move it quicker. I can tell, again, let's go back to this. An all-knowing, all-powerful, continuous entity is not going to give a shit about a copper rod. Right? Like it's not going to get into that. So when was your first, I would say, I mean, besides, that one that you're talking about, do you have I guess you would say an experience of a lower vibrational, or something, of course, as you were growing, or you do trauma therapy, right? So you can feel the vibration, or maybe there's lower vibrational things attached to somebody. Or I always find that when somebody passes of like a massive overdose, but they're feeding it to themselves, right? So it's a suicide. There's that darker kind of portion of them that's attached, and you feel that. And then, of course, they enlighten and they move up. What are your experiences in all of that?
Yeah, so my experience in working with that energy, if I see it, we're going to deal with it, right? So like I like to really explain what I found out with that, what I ultimately found out after having experience after experience after experience. What I found out was that energy is not anything satanic. It's not anything evil. Evil is created, and
Yeah.
we can talk about that in a minute. But evil
Um,
is created, so it's not anything. Maybe it's not anything that has a malicious intent that it can act on. What that energy is their uncomfortable emotions, right?
right.
It's grief, it's sadness, it's anger, it's depression, and it's spirits that are so lost in that energy. That's all they're emanating. Okay.
Right.
But what happens is when you come across that type of energy, if you work with it, you can get that energy to transmute, to kind of dissipate, to leave. I see it leave it kind of like they're in this black cloud. And when you get them to realize who they are, that they're not these emotions that they're lost in, that
Yeah.
black cloud starts to lift, and you see the light being, you see the spirit, and they see themselves, and then from there they cross over easily. But what it took for me to like actually get to that point was facing it,
Yeah.
right? And there was one experience specifically where it gets pretty dark here.
Yeah.
And I know that your audience can handle it because, I told the story too to my audience, and we kind of have a similar audience. So, I'm going to tell the story in the hopes that it can help somebody else out there. And it does get a little dark. So bear with me, trigger warning, all that stuff.
They're good. They know. I tell them some crazy stuff all the time. They popcorn every single time. So no, go for it.
Yeah, you're a straight shooter like I am, and that's why I relate, and that's why we get along so well, and it's easy to talk. So,
Oh, by the
okay,
way, before you go into it, I think it's so funny. So you and I, we both like dabble in the astrology part. So you sent me your chart, I sent you yours. That's literally like somebody. This is how I act. This is how I act. Is this good? Yes. It was like speed friend dating in like a half a second. That's what that is. I just thought it was funny. I wanted to tell you about that.
I do that with everyone. Anyone that I get close with, like, let me see your chart.
Yep.
Right. So anyway, yeah,
Yep.
that's
Just
cool. I love it too. Um, so yeah, so the experience I had, so after that initial experience where I realized that I was sensing the spirit's fear, every time I sensed a spirit that I was afraid of, I just faced it. Okay. And I was still afraid of it every time that I did it. But
oh,
here's what dropped that fear. So I was in training to become a past life regression therapist. And this isn't just any kind of like I tell most people, like, most past life regression out there is past life tourism. Look, this is what you're doing. This is your life. And what I was learning was I was learning a process developed by a Jungian analyst named Roger Wilger. He was very clinical in the sense. There was a lot of modalities that were brought in. There was a lot of stuff that it was rooted in shamanic principles, psychological principles, many other things. It was a very clinical type of regression. And so we were professionally trained in that sense. And we were using the past life technique to go in and open up trauma that happened in past lives and bring it to resolution.
yeah.
And so the woman that I trained with her name was Patricia Walsh. She's the US chief trainer for deep memory process. It was the training that I went through. The woman that I worked with, it so happened that she lived here in Sarasota, and I was able to do a lot of regression work with her before I went into training.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was very aware of my fear of spirits. And
Yes.
and in the trainings that we do, um, so as you're getting trained, and it's a 4-year program. It's not this weekend course, right? It's a 4-year program that I went through. And when we would get together and do the trainings, it was you give a session and you get a session. So you're not just learning technique, you're doing the work,
Right.
you're actually doing the work, and you're actually getting the work done, and you're doing your own inner work. And so this was like on one of the last days of one of the trainings. I go into this past life, and it's this past life where I'm a little boy and my family's part of this satanic cult. Okay. And I'm there, and my mother's this witch, and she's just totally like all enamored in it. And my father's this good dude that he's like, we need to get you out of here, son. This isn't your life. This is wrong. Somehow, some way, he ended up waking up and realizing that that was not the way, right?
Yeah.
And so, to make a long story short, we go through it. Me and my father tries to get me to escape. We're on horses, and this cult comes and runs us down, ends up killing my father, and they bring me to this altar, right? and they're trying to make these spirits possess me, but I won't let it happen, right? I'm this little boy, I'm like 8 years old, and they get so frustrated. I'm so afraid. I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, oh my God. And I can see the spirits, I can see these demons, right? And I'm going, oh my God, what's going on? What's going on? And they got so frustrated that I wouldn't let them in, that I wouldn't
Mhm.
let them come in because I wasn't conditioned like the rest of the cult. I wouldn't let them come in, that they ended up just killing me. And I died with this fear of being possessed. And
Aww.
that caused that fear, that irrational fear to imprint. So as we're going through the regression, right? I
Yeah.
die, and these fucking spirits are chasing me around in the spirit world. And I get up because we're laying on mats. I'm in the regression.
Yeah.
I get up off the mat. And I'm like, fuck this. I'm done. I can't do this. These things. And my teacher knew. She knew. She came running right over and she grabs me, slams me down on the mat. She's like, we're fucking doing this. Look at them in the eyes. Right? And I was like, I can't do it. I can't do it. And I'm freaking out. And she's like, look at him in the eyes. And she's like yelling at me. She's like, look at him in the eyes. And I was so afraid. And I looked at them in
Yeah.
the eyes and I saw this spark of light. And I was like, oh my God. And in that moment, all of my fear lifted. And she goes, now talk to them, ask them what they want. And so we had this whole thing going on, and I ended up helping them. And in that moment, and this is where I realized I ended up helping those spirits as this little 8-year-old spirit boy. I ended up helping these spirits, these demons,
Yeah.
realize who they are and that they are from the light and that they are these all-knowing, all-powerful beings, right? And they don't have to carry the weight of their experiences anymore. And I helped them as this little 8-year-old spirit boy. I helped them dissolve that energy. And then I saw them for who they are. And then I saw their family members and their ancestors come for them and bring them into the light. And ever since then, and so to make a long story short, so we end up integrating this little 8-year-old spirit boy. We get him to cross over and rejoin my consciousness. And ever since then, number one, the irrational fear of something's going to get me, right? I'm going to be possessed or
Yeah.
bad things can happen. That's gone. I no longer have a fear of any kind of spirit. And the my understanding of what that energy completely shifted because I saw what it was now. And that was the experience. And then so after that, I was like, I want to keep doing that. I know this is my calling. I need to help these beings. Whatever is experiencing, right? That dark energy, it will work itself out, right? It'll eventually wake up and have this realization, but we can help it. And
Yes.
I knew after that experience, one, I dropped all of my fear, and number two, that I was meant to work with that type of energy and help it. And so that was my experience. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. That is, yeah, that's it. That's exactly where it needs to be. That's exactly where it needs to be. That is really, really cool. I've done past life regressions. I've had accidental ones on myself. And I think I kind of figured out, like getting into a zoned out state and stuff like that. Very accidental. I think I figured out, if we're talking about a past life regression thing, how I got my disease or how that ended up being. So one of the things with my illness is that all of my joints dislocate, consistently, because that's part of the whole, thing. I don't have the collagen to create it. And so this was about, I don't know, 2 years ago. It was a dream, but it was definitely real. And I ended up doing some research on what I was seeing, and it would make sense as to why I'm so pulled to World War I. Anyways, I was some sort of like medic or something in World War I, and I was running, and I was in the British, like, Air Force or whatever that is, Army, because of the green and the type of backpack I was wearing. And I was running through these hills, like kind of like these kind of long out, maybe it's Verdun, maybe it's something like that. And I get blown up by an IUD. That's the whole thing. Boom, right? And so it all goes everywhere. And so I have an illness now that all of my joints dislocate everywhere. And so there's just, I don't know, there's like weird things. It goes all the way through. I think the reason why I'm this, 6 feet, 118 pounds, chronically ill noodle, is because I was swinging and banging too much in past lives. And God was just like, you have to do this time. This is your karma now. But no, that's my thing. But it would be very interesting to see, how all of this is layered on top of each other. How do you feel about I guess you'd even say like going into ancestors, going into reincarnation. Have you gotten into where you can, I guess you would say, feel or experience or know when somebody is reincarnated? What I mean, everybody is to a certain point, but I guess let's back it up. So I've had some very interesting incriminating evidence when I've had a couple of sessions. There was one that I had recently. It was about 6 months ago. There was a woman. She comes to me. She wants to channel her mother. The mother shows up. It's a fraction version of the mother. The mother shows me sitting on a bed, and she has a gun, double barrel shotgun. Here, she shoots herself in the stomach, bleeds out, dies. Like that's this whole thing. And I told the lady, I was like, did your mom commit suicide? And the lady goes, no, somebody shot her. And I was like, anyways. About a month later, I get an email. She says, my grandmother always told me that somebody shot her, but she did. She committed suicide. Anyway, so first off, weird thing. During the session, the mother, it's like a fraction version of the mother, talks about how she is this 3-year-old little girl that is going to live with this woman. Okay. And it's like a family member. It feels like it would be a daughter, but I don't know how a 3-year-old that is a daughter is going to live with a woman. Like that doesn't make any sense in my head. So I tell her, and she goes, my niece, my sister's son's kid, my great niece, is going to come live with me because they're drug addicts and she's 3. And so they go and they talk about how the birthdays are the same, and they talk about how she's going to have this massive like red mark on her stomach. I kid you not. I go and I pull up the charts. They're almost phonetically the same all the way through. So that's an energetic thing. And then she has this massive red birthmark that goes all the way around and all the way to the back. And they named her after her. And so as soon as we had the session, I never felt the mother spirit again. It was like it was enlightened and everything matched. It was. Have you ever experienced anything like that? Because I'm still trying to figure that out in my life, or what that is.
I haven't had any direct experience with that, like knowing somebody that reincarnated, right?
Yeah.
I've never had any direct experience like that. The way that I understand reincarnation, and again, this is through my experience.
Yeah.
So I have to take it back and tell another story.
Do it. Do it. I like it. You know, I'm sitting with my tea and my popcorn here, so let's do it.
So the way that I came to this realization of like, we are these omnipresent beings, right, that are everything, and at the end of all of that, we're all connected, right?
Yeah.
And I never really understood this. Oh, we're all one. I just thought, like, I thought that was so stupid when I heard people say that.
I know
until this experience, right? And now I kind of like, I think it's thrown around and people don't know really what it means. But once I had this experience, I really understood. Like, I really understood for me. So I'm a huge advocate for plant medicine, and I've worked with shamans from all over the world and been to shamanic ceremonies and done plant medicine ceremonies a handful of times. For me, it was, I know that the last one that I did was done. I don't need any more. I don't have the urge to.
I was gonna. If you ever want to do DMT together in Canada, please let me know. I would love to have that experience, but I don't trust anybody else to do it with. Anyways, we're just I want to know how it feels and like what I would get. So anyways, that's a whole nother, and I know it's legal up there in Canada. So, okay, keep going. Sorry. I don't do drugs, but that.
Yeah, I don't do drugs either. But you know, that was the big thing, is for me that I wanted to, I had intention, right? I had a lot of intention behind this ceremony, right? And that's what I tell everybody. Anyone out there that's looking at this, watching this live, that is like, want to go out and search and try and find somewhere to go do plant medicine, don't ever do that, because you're going to end up getting in with the wrong crowd or doing the wrong medicine. If you want to do medicine, if the spirit of the plant is alive, speak
Correct.
to it and ask if it wants to work with you. Because I did that in the beginning. I first went, I was like, oh, everybody has an ayahuasca journey whenever they awaken. And so I went and did my ayahuasca journey. I drank buckets of the stuff, 2-3 times much as anyone else in the whole ceremony, and I didn't get anything, like literally nothing, right? And the only thing that I got was towards the end of the ceremony, I started to open up to the plant was whispering to me, the spirit of the plant, and was like, there's another medicine that's going to contact you in 2 weeks. I'm not the one. And so that's when it did. So I let go of all resistance, and what ended up happening was the spirit of Awakoya started to talk to me. And Awakoya is an Ecuadorian cactus, right? It's like San Pedro. And
Okay.
so Wachuma, like there's all these names for it. And so the spirit started to talk to me, and it was like, and I was like, okay. And so it led me to this Ecuadorian shaman, which was a woman. And it was fascinating because she actually came to my area from Ecuador. And so I was part of this medicine journey. And so my intent in this journey, what I wanted to do is I was like, I need to know where my energy begins and where it ends. I want to know who I am, right?
Yeah.
That was my entire freaking intent for this thing. And
For
so
me.
what I ended up happening was, I'll just simplify. So make a long story short, what ended up happening, I was doing all this journeying, all of this other stuff, having flashes and insights. And then I got to the point where I guess where I was ready. And I
Yeah.
started to go through all of these wormholes, and I started to like, it was like I started to expand out of my body, right?
Uh-huh.
And I
Uh-huh.
started to really expand, and I was following my energy out of my body, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. And I got into like outer space, and I can see all of these other little streams of energy coming off of everything, coming off the plants, coming off the people, coming off the planet, coming off the water, coming like everything in existence had these streams of energy. And I was just like following all of that in my own stream. And I kept
Yeah.
going, and it seemed like I was going for like 5, 10 minutes, but I'm sure it was a lot faster. And I
Yes.
start to arrive at like this big white sun. And that's all I could see was this huge white energy. And I
Yeah.
go, and I could see all the streams of everything going into that. And I go, that's amazing. I want to go in there. That's where I'm
Ah,
going. And so I go into this sun, and I immediately experience myself as everything. And when I say
yes.
everything, I experience myself as every person, every plant, every animal, every planet, every alien, every species, every star, every single thing. It was the most profound spiritual experience I've ever had in my life. And
Mm,
as I was starting to bask in like this amazingness, I was like, what comes after this? I need to keep going. And so I keep going, and I get to what I feel like is the edge of the sun. And then
yeah.
all of a sudden, everything just like collapses back down onto itself. I'm back in my body. I'm back. My awareness is back in my body. I'm in this plant medicine ceremony. And I get the awareness of this is all you can understand while you have energy projected into this body. You have to
Yes.
leave you have to leave in order to understand more. And I was like, I'm cool. I have a family and I love them. Right. So,
I know.
so
Oh my yes. Yes. Well, you okay. So it's and this isn't oh, I love these trippy conversations. They're amazing. This is what my brain does like when I'm in the shower all day and I talk to my husband like, do you need more coffee? And I'm like, yeah. There it's there oh God yeah because you are me, I am you, we're aspected in different things, but what is me, what is you, we're all like we're all connected, and we're all part of each other. And I don't know, I remember, I guess before the ego was dissolved, or before, and that's a constant battle, right? Because you're in this environment, you're in this people place. But when I sit there and I'm by myself, like maybe in bed at night, and I'm just laying there, there's almost a comfort to me to know that yes, currently I'm in this body. Everybody recognizes this hair, or this face, or these eyes as being, Amy. But I'm actually not Amy. I'm not a body. I'm not anything like, not my thoughts, my feelings, and emotions. It's expanded. I'm you. You're me. That's why we found each other. I'm everybody here as well. But what is I? It's nothing. But it is everything. And so there's a comfort to knowing when
yes,
you cross over, when your body, that you are part of something bigger, that yes keeps itself in a consciousness, and you can channel it, and you can get into that. I don't know, some people find it scary. I think it's absolutely fucking amazing. Like, but I also know that we need to be here to expand, to understand, to grow. And it's also all in our perception. Yesterday I was at lunch with my husband, and he goes, Amy, he goes, everything in life, he was having a moment. He's very logical. He's a lot of Taurus and Capricorn, and then like an Aries in there as well. Like, very interesting conversation. And he goes, Amy, everything in life difficult. And I was like, right there, you are already making it difficult. He goes, why? He goes, we do stuff and then we try to redo it and it makes it more difficult. I said, it's only difficult if you deem it to be. I said, it may be hard to others. I said, or you can just do. I said, if you didn't have the lack of knowledge, if you had the lack of, if you didn't have the knowledge of what it was before or what it could be, then you're just in the moment doing it. Right? It's not hard. You're only comparing your experiences based to past things. But so that means you're not living in the present moment. And of course, he looks over at me and he tells me to shut the fuck up, and we go in and eat barbecue. But that is our relationship.
Oh
But
man, Texas barbecue. Oh, you like. I'm so hungry now. That's my. I don't mean to interrupt you, but that's my favorite thing about Texas was the barbecue. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
well, no, fine. Well, I have a smoker, I have a pit, I do my own barbecue, but then I always like to go out and get beef ribs, and like that's one of my favorite things. So come on over. I'll treat you to Texas barbecue. We'll go get some good food. I'll take you to my favorite taquerias, and then we'll do all the things. But with like the lower, that's so funny. With okay, pause. Sorry, we're going into a million different subjects. Now I know that you have an ex-wife, right? I have an ex-husband, but now I have a new one. How did your, because there's a lot of people on here that follow us that they're coming into a spiritual awakening, and maybe they're realizing that they're pulling away from their partner, and in a sense they find that that's bad, but it's not. It's just part of the journey, and then they try to have them come on board with them, and that person's not ready, and then that causes them to be pushed further apart because they feel like they're not being supported. But this is a journey all on your own, and you can't bring somebody into it if they're not ready, right? And then they go and they deem that as negative, or they deem that as bad, or they talk about them being mean to them, because they don't want to be a part of this or this expansion. There are some people in this life that just aren't going to get there, and we have to be okay with that. How was your journey? I guess you say, I know you co-parent and everything too. How was that? Because my ex-husband absolutely hates this. Absolutely hates this. What about you?
Yeah, so my ex, she's not really. I mean, we really don't have much of a relationship other than when it comes to my daughter, because we're so different, right? And she doesn't understand a lot of this stuff. And when it came to court, when we were in court and doing custody and all that bullshit, all of this came up, right? Everything came up, and they're playing videos in court and all this other stuff, and so anyway. So she's not really supportive on that side of things, but it doesn't really matter, because for me, one of the greatest self-awareness tools that I ever have experienced was her. She was the one that pointed out and showed me all of the stuff that I was ashamed of, all of the stuff that I was running from of myself, right? All of the things that I feared. Like I say all the time, she was my greatest spiritual teacher, 100%. And our relationships have the ability to do that. It's just most people get caught in this vicious cycle of being triggered and projecting their stuff to really realize what's going on. And that's where the pain comes in, because it's like, well, your partner, you're going to draw on somebody that has the same type of unresolved pain that you have. It's unconscious, because that's what you're looking for. If you had daddy issues, you're going to try and bring in a partner that has a daddy. If you have mommy issues, you're going to bring in a partner that has a mom, that's like your mom. And so, because those are our unresolved issues, and because of our pain matches in that way, my unresolved pain is going to trigger my partner's unresolved pain. And in that moment, my partner, and this is just an example, in that moment, my partner has a choice. Do I own the pain that just got triggered within me, or do I look to the source and say, it's you making me feel this way? And that's what happens for most people. And that's where the pain and the cycles of relationships happen. When we can get into a place and we can use our relationships, our personal relationships, as self-awareness tools of going, ooh, God, this thing that you just like, oh my God, like you told me to do the dishes and I know that you were being loving, but man, the way that you said that, fuck, that really boils my blood. It has nothing to do with the dishes, has nothing to do with your partner. What just got triggered in me? And when we can look at our relationships in that and take responsibility for what, because the material is ours, right? The
Yes.
trigger is ours. It's
Yes.
not theirs, right?
Yeah.
We're the ones pulling it. And
Correct.
so we have to take responsibility for that. And when we can treat our relationships as the self-reflecting, as a self-awareness tool that they are, we can, if only one person is doing that, then you naturally will outgrow the relationship, very fast.
Correct.
And that's kind of what happened with mine. We were in therapy and couples therapy, and I started to, what I look back now, I was starting to do a lot of self-awareness stuff and self-journeying stuff, and I grew away so freaking fast. And continue. And now, like where I am now and where she is now, I'm like, oh my God, I cannot imagine what my life would be like had I not had this.
I know. I went. Yeah, I went and share custody with my son with my ex husband, and he's married to this new woman who's great, who's a great co-parenting. We all get along really well now, but I just kind of like sat there for a second, and I sat in that energy, and I put myself back in that time, and I was like, I I have no idea how I could just fit back into this. Like it just felt. It just wouldn't be able to. And so I'm glad you're able to share that with a lot of people. It's a big thing, and a lot of people are afraid to like move forward, right, or move on. Fear in the darker vibration, right? Fear is the thing, is like a root of all evil. Don't be fearful. Trust, love, go for it. If you have this pull, if you have that intuition, right? That's your spirits, that's yourself, that's your higher self, that's God, that's moving you forward, and telling you to go. So don't block it, because when you create resistance, that of course creates resistance within yourself, and that's when we start feeling really, really bad about ourselves. I want to go into. I have a lot of friends that I'm from Houston, and I grew up in inner city Houston, and every single one of my friends was either from Mexico, Ecuador, Venezuela, or they were from India or Vietnam. Every single one of them. I was the only white girl, and my nickname was the Wella. Like that was it. All, and that's how I learned Spanish and Eres todo porroso. I mean, you name it. And so, I in the Hispanic community, which is amazing. Love them. They, they have, of course, they have like folklore, which is going into, our saint over here. So the Saint of the Dead, all the way to, which is still a saint, all the way to, the Guadalupe, which is a big thing. I read a lot of that, and they talk about that. But there's some people out there, yes, spirits talk about that, but there's some people out there that will say to the client, you have a dark curse on you, and everything afterwards will be bad. So many people that come in and say, am I cursed? And I'm like, no, you're not. No, you're doing it to, like, what? How do you feel about that? How would you rebuttal that? How would you help somebody find peace in something that's not only being said by somebody that we should look up to, right? Like a shaman. A lot of people in like these, outer areas, that's their person, right? How would you let them know that curses aren't a thing, right? It's all intention. It's all what becomes you. What do you think?
So the way that I describe curses, it's the same way that I talk about spirit. It's the same exact principle when it comes to spirit attachments. And so a curse is just an intention. That's
Correct.
it. A curse is an intention somebody else has for another person, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so in order for that curse to hook in to somebody's energy field or in order for that intention to hook into somebody's energy field, there has to be a hook. This is the best way that I can explain it in a demystified way.
Do it.
So let's say you have somebody that is very self-conscious about their intelligence. They've experienced whatever trauma they've experienced. Maybe they were grown up in a critical home where they never were good enough for their parents. And so they have this insecurity about their intelligence. If I walk up to that person and go, you're so stupid,
yeah,
my words are going to hook into them, and they're going to hook into that insecurity, and they're going to feel like shit. It's going to trigger every bit of unresolved pain that they have around their self-confidence issues with intelligence. Okay.
Yep.
Now, if I go to somebody that's very confident, that's well accomplished, and that is confident 100% in their intelligence, if I go up to them and go, "You're stupid," they're going to go, "What are you talking about, bro? See you later." They're not even going to feel it, right? They're not even going to feel it. Because there's not that hook. They don't have the hook. in their energy field for my intention to stick. Curses
Correct.
are the same way. And so the focus should never, ever be on what somebody else is doing and their intent for us. The focus should be on what unresolved pain do I have in my energy field, and I need to deal with that, heal the hook. Nothing
Yep.
else matters. And it all goes down to the same thing. It's the same thing when we talk about spiritual protection. How do I protect myself from bad spirits? The same thing. Heal
Yes.
the hook, those spirits won't be around.
Correct. Absolutely correct. Good. Good. I'm glad. Yeah. So they somebody did a curse, or there's this bad thing that's hooked onto me. No, they'll hang around you, but if you don't let them, again, go fuck yourself, not you, but them. And that it that's what makes it go away. So would you ever, I just have a question. Would you ever go to the Conjuring House with me?
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I got invited by Penn State Paranormal Society. They wanted to do it in the end of July. It's already the end of July. I can't make it, but then they have another thing in October that they go up with. And I was like, and I love them. They're amazing, but they're also the people that are sometimes are like, God, there's all these haunted dolls, and I need you to do this for TV. And I'm like, that's not what I believe in, like I've never actually seen that before. And so I was like, well, what if we could bring in like two people and then feeling, and that whole thing. And so my husband won't go with me, and then my assistant won't go with me either because they're terrified. And so I need somebody that's not going to be afraid, so they can sit on the sidelines while we like go in and feel and be like, there's nothing. Now there may be, there obviously would be something negative or lower vibration. Now, I want to ask you about that. Thank you. That brought me into something else. I know for a fact that there are things that are, I don't even know how to describe it. Like they were never people. They were never, in a higher vibration of love. And I've only experienced it a handful of times. There is something, but it's almost like they're attached to earth, right? It's almost like they're attached to the ground. Like they're these like deeper things. And for me, that would almost be like subsonic, like a vibration that like even lower than that. That's even more ancient, and ancient goes in time. Time doesn't exist, but I don't know what that is yet. And I don't know if I want to play with it. What have you ever experienced anything that was that heavy, that wasn't anything you could talk to? Because I have a couple of times, but I don't want to go there.
I have. I'm not scared of it. And
Yeah.
here's the thing. Here's what I experienced it to be. It's a whole lot
Yeah.
of souls that experienced some really awful shit that are lost in that.
Yeah. It's a
And
club.
it's such a massive, heavy energy field because by sheer, for lack of a better term, volume.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. And so the way that you communicate with that, and the way that I've communicated with that energy before when I felt it, is it's like it is when you're sitting there trying to communicate with that heaviness, it won't talk back. But
No.
when you say, but when so what I do is I say, okay, I understand, I see what's going on.
No.
Can a representative step forward and speak for the collective?
Oh.
And then that's usually what happens is that we'll have an aspect of that energy that steps forward that we can work with and talk to. But when we talk about energy on that level, it takes, it's just so working with that energy and help bringing it to resolution and help healing the pain that's there. Again, that energy, I want to be clear, that energy will eventually work itself out over, for lack of a better term, time, right?
Yeah.
It will
Yep.
eventually work itself out, and it'll start to diffuse, and it'll have the experiences it needs to have, and eventually everything will eventually end up back where it belongs. But there are things that we can do to help move that energy along. But it's basically like a therapy session. And so I like when I'm working with something on that type of a scale, it's impossible for me to do it on my own. It's just like if I'm in a room and I'm working with, and I'm at an event and I'm 100, 200, 300 people are in this event. It's like trying to resolve the trauma of all of those people in that event while I'm on stage. It's almost impossible for me to do it alone.
Yeah. I agree. Right there with you. I don't know. We need to meet up in like Louisiana, Mississippi, the whole thing. I'm obsessed with battlefields and old things. I just like going there and feeling I don't know, it gets to be an obsession. You know what I'm talking about. It's like you get there and you're like, oh, it's spooky. I like it.
I
Like there's
love it. I love it. The most ancient places I've ever been was Egypt, and we talked about that last time. That whole tour. That for me,
New
the
Orleans.
energy there was just tuning
Oh,
into some of the stuff and channeling some of that, and then the mummies. Like we went to. Oh gosh, it was. It
oh
was. I love it. Like I was like a kid in a candy shop.
yeah. Yes, you just run around and have a good time. Well, okay, so we'll jump on a call tomorrow. I know it's 3:30. I know you got to go do stuff. I know I got to go do stuff too and get ready for sessions. I want to thank you again for being here, y'all. So he is Gettysburg. Yes, I was in Gettysburg last year. He is a licensed trauma therapist, and then he also does medium well in like helping spirits. So go and check out his page. Go and check out everything over there too. Really, really cool guy. So just yeah, I'll message you and we'll talk tomorrow about that. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, and also I want to let everybody know too that while we've got everybody here. So as of now, Amy and I are going to be doing this every Thursday, same time. So we're gonna continue it for as long as we can continue, and just to give everybody the heads up. I really appreciate you, Amy, and I thank everybody too for watching and tuning in and the participation and reading through some of the comments. There's just some really beautiful things happening. So I really appreciate you.
It's very cool. Yeah, the person that said like this is a day in history. I was like, how funny. I love it. I want to talk about their comments, but I don't want to interrupt you. It's weird. It's the whole thing. So yeah, we'll make another event. Subscribe to that if you want to be here for next week, y'all. And I love you and I'll talk to you in the morning, okay?
Love you. See you in the morning. Talk to you in the morning. Bye.
I have